Welcome to the 2025 season of Tech Industry Forum's fortnightly video podcast show, TLA, which we produce with the help of our friends here at Disruptive Live. In each episode, we interview one of our members or someone from the tech ecosystem about using technology and leadership to gain the advantage. What works, what doesn't, and what's next. I'm David Terra. I'm the CEO of the Tech Industry Forum, which is a not-for-profit trade body that exists to help the UK's tech sector and digital economy grow and become the benchmark for digital excellence worldwide. If you want to find out more about us, we're at techindustryforum.org. I'm David_Terra on X and Threads and Instagram, and easy to find on LinkedIn and elsewhere. Actually, today's guest is a friend of the show, and he was on our first 2024 show as a guest a year ago, so maybe we're starting a trend. He's a former IBM Managing Partner, an in-demand keynote speaker, a TEDx presenter, a technology advisor to major corporations, and he calls himself the Actionable Futurist. He's Andrew Grill, and we're going to be talking about him and his important new book. Andrew, welcome to the show.
David, great to be here.
Great stuff. Now, we've known each other for maybe just under 20 years, I think. But before we get to the book, tell us a bit about your background and what's an actionable futurist.
Good question. So I'm a technologist.
Yeah.
I grew up being curious about technology. If I go back, in fact, I talk about it in the opening chapters of the book. I was doing experiments at age 6 with my father, lying on the floor, wiring together lamps and seeing if they glowed dimly or brightly. And then actually writing down the results in a logbook. And I wish I could find that logbook, but it meant that I've been curious. I've been asking why for so long. Fast forward, I did an engineering degree. I worked for a bunch of startups. I worked for some telcos in Australia and also worked for IBM, as you mentioned. Throughout that time, I've remained curious. I always want to understand, why is this technology important? What makes it work? Having an engineering background means that I actually look at things from what we call first principles.
Yeah.
So during the pandemic, when people had problems with their monitors and Wi-Fi's, I'd get the phone call.
Yes.
And it would be, are there lights flashing on the router? No. Okay, there's your problem. Things like that.
Yeah.
So I've been curious for a while now. In terms of the actionable futurist, everyone probably knows or have heard about a futurist. My favorite futurist is Arthur C. Clarke. Famously, he predicted satellites back in the 50s.
Yeah.
And in fact, he was asked by an Australian journalist in 1974 what the world would look like in 2000. And he pretty much predicted the internet. And I've seen this on film, it's amazing. And I thought, that's great, but what Arthur and others are doing are predicting things that are going to happen in 30 years' time. Most of my clients don't have 30 years. They haven't got 30 weeks, maybe not even 30 days. They need to know now, what do I need to know to best harness this technology? So I call myself the Actionable Futurist, which means that at the end of every talk, end of every chapter in the book, there are 5 things that you can do today, tomorrow, next week to become more curious about this technology.
Excellent. And I love the Arthur C. Clarke reference. In fact, you can go find that on YouTube if you that kind of like describing what the internet would be, way ahead of anyone else. Now, you've got the book there.
I have.
Digitally Curious. Tell us about the book, and obviously you've explained a bit about curious. Why digitally curious?
Being curious means that I'm always asking questions, and in fact, if I go back about 7 years, when I start my talks, I used to be the speaker that would go, "Hi, it's nice to be here in wherever, and everyone having a good time. Can you all hear me at the back?" And I thought, no, I want to be an impactful speaker. So from that point onwards, I've asked an open question. I will literally stride onto stage, and I will ask the room, "Are you digitally curious?"
Yeah.
And they look around and go, what's happening here? And I asked them 6 questions. And I've asked you came to my book launch, and I asked the room 6 questions. The first one is, have you Googled yourself lately?
Yeah.
Do you consume all your newspapers and magazines digitally? Yeah. Do you bank with an app-only bank? Mm-hmm. Have you got 2-factor turned on? Mm-hmm. Have you used ChatGPT and use it every day? And the last question is, have you bought some cryptocurrency? Now, those 6 questions, I get people to stand up and sit down so I can see in front of me in the room who was curious. And I thought, I want to extend that. I want to actually educate people on why it means to be digitally curious, but I want to do it in an accessible way. So the feedback I've got from people around the world is that this book actually is not overly technical, although it's a book about technology. Yeah. It actually allows them to understand what these technologies mean for them and for their business.
I like it. So actually you're talking about a kind of a mindset for dealing with the digital landscape that we've got coming at us fast at the moment.
Well, the future belongs to the curious. Yeah. And so if you actually are curious, if you go and seek out these new technologies, if you're ahead of everyone else, you've got a competitive advantage. It's no longer optional to be up to speed with new technology. It's essential. And what I see is that, and why I get hired, is to go and talk to the most senior leaders at some of the largest companies around the world. And they're saying, Andrew, we take AI as an example. We're not sure what to do. We've played with this technology. We don't know how to implement this into our business and actually harness this. What should we do?
Now, that all sounds great, but why is that so important? I mean, is there an evidence to say that digitally curious organisations do better than the rest?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you think about it, if you're ahead of your competition, if you understand what generative AI can do for you and you're implementing it now in 2025 and your competitors are thinking about doing it maybe later this year into next year, you've got that competitive advantage. If I had this opportunity 30 years ago and you asked me, Andrew, should our members be on the internet? The answer now is obvious, but back then it wasn't obvious. I've been online since 1983 with dial-up. I've had a website since 1994 at university and a domain name since 1999. So I've been playing with this for a while. So when that question is asked, it's of course, because you can appear bigger than your competitors. But there are lots of stories when the internet first came about. I think famously McDonald's didn't actually have mcdonalds.com. Someone else bought it. And they're like, well, why would we have a domain name? Another thing to Google on YouTube, Bryant Gumbel from the Today Show trying to explain what the @ symbol means when they email the NBC show.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, one of the things in the book that I was intrigued by is you have something called the Starbucks test. What's that?
It's a little trick that I do. So you're in your favorite coffee shop, other coffee shops are available, and you overhear someone talking about a technology. Yeah. This first happened to me in the Holland Park store in 2009, I think it was. Someone was talking about Twitter, now called X. And I'd been using it for some time. And I thought, wow, if the general public are talking about a technology, a tool, a platform that I'm using, it's become mainstream. So now I'm in my favorite Starbucks and people are sitting next to me using ChatGPT. They're talking about it. My friends are saying, oh, I used this the other day and it was really, really useful. So what you want to do is be curious enough to be ahead of the game so that you're the person that is overhearing the conversation going, I've been doing this for a year. I'm using this tool, this technique. So the Starbucks test is when it's gone mainstream. And if you've only just heard about it, you're too late.
Yep, I get that. Now, obviously we've very quickly got to generative AI and that kind of thing, but actually in the book you kind of go back to the history. You start with Alan Turing. Tell us a bit why you went back to the start.
Well, a lot of the audiences that I speak to, they came across AI and what it meant for them a couple of years ago when ChatGPT 3.5 was launched, which made my job very easy because 10 years ago I was talking about AI. But how do you explain it? How do you show it? The fact is that everyone watching this now, everyone that's in front of me, if they can send a text message, they can exercise an AI model with a ChatGPT or one of those as well. So I go back to the grandfather, I suppose, of AI. Back in 1950, Dr. Alan Turing wrote a research paper. And the very first line of that research paper asked a question. The question was, can machines think? 75 years later, sorry, not 75 years, what are we? 75 years later, we are now in a stage where everyone's talking about it. And why I go back to that is I basically show that it's been around for a long time. It's not new. That we were talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning way back in the 50s. It's not new. The fact that ChatGPT launched onto the stage in late 2022, that news outlets were talking about it, it became mainstream, everyone was talking about it. But here's the thing. I talked about the 6 questions I ask when I ask my audiences, are you digitally curious? And we get to question 5 and I say, stand up if you use ChatGPT. Almost everyone stands up.
Yes.
I then say, stay standing if you use it every day. Most people sit down. And I've had that reaction for the last 2 years. Why? People haven't worked out how to integrate this technology into their daily workflow. And I think until we do that, we're going to have some resistance because AI is not cheap. And so people are saying, what's the ROI? Are all my people going to be doing these things? Are we all going to be out of a job? I have a phrase that I hope people remember, that AI won't take your job. Nope. Someone who knows how to use AI will take your job.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the right approach. So covering AI in the book, you talk about the strengths and also the limitations. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, AI does some things really well. It works really well at scale and speed. I used this analogy the other day. Imagine if you could remember everything you've ever been taught. We forget things. We forget things we learned at school a few years ago. But imagine if you could recall all of that. You'd be super intelligent, but we forget things. But AI has the ability to do that. So it does things at speed and scale. It can generate things. So for example, today you shared with me some of the potential questions you want to ask me. Yeah. I've actually created a GPT of the book. So I went back to what I call the Curious GPT, which is on a QR code at the back of the book. And I basically put the questions in. I said, how would you answer this given that you've read the book? And it was actually really interesting to understand how those questions might be framed. I don't think I'm reciting them as the GPT did, but thought, what about that avenue that you could take? So that's the good stuff. The bad stuff, AI will never feel empathy or love, which means when you're making decisions that require a level of empathy, that's going to be missing. The other thing is that there's an incredible bias. One thing I encourage people to do when they're recruiting for AI teams that train the models is make sure they're diverse. Otherwise, you're going to have, if you have a team that's only white, male, pale and stale like we are, you're going to have that bias in there. So it's actually important, and diversity is incredibly important, but it's actually more important when you're training these AI models. Once you've trained them, that bias lives there for a long time.
I totally agree with you, because it's all about the data. It's all about having the right data to get the right answer. And a lot of the data that's around on the internet has been biased for a long time. Tell me, a little while ago, you were in your answer, you were talking about the fact that everyone puts up their hand for using it, but not every day. And you're right, we're 2 years into it, and there are some people getting to grips with it, but lots of people aren't. What's your recommendation for what those people ought to be doing? What's the strategy so that I actually deploy it properly?
As you'd expect, I want them to be more digitally curious.
Yes.
I'll give you an example. And a friend of mine told me this. She was having a drink with a girlfriend at the pub, and she said, look, I only have one drink. I've got to go. I've got to do my lesson plan for my students tomorrow. And she said, no, you're staying here for another drink. Why don't we put what your requirements are into ChatGPT on my phone, and let's see if it can create a lesson plan. And it did. The teacher friend went, oh my goodness, I didn't know it could do that. She now uses it on a regular basis to help her lesson planning. It's that I didn't know it could do that. I still find uses for it that I didn't know it could do. So the other day I had a screenshot of a PowerPoint slide that was a bit fuzzy. I couldn't quite read it. It was very, very condensed. I thought, I wonder if AI can actually recover this. And so I put it into there. Verbatim, it gave me what I was missing. So even I'm finding uses for this tool as well. But I think people need to try it, but they need to try it in ways that are actually going to benefit. The way I suggest people do is, if I told you, David, I'm going to give you a free intern. You now have an intern, you have a generative AI tool.
Exactly.
Why don't you task some of the things that you just want someone else to do for you to an AI? You'll have that aha moment. You'll go, I didn't know it could do that. And the sort of Starbucks conversations I'm overhearing are people who are going, did you know it could do this? And of course, I've been doing that for years. So it really is about exercising that and keep asking it questions until it says no.
So it's all about deploying it for your own processes to make them more effective. But what about for adding it into the products and services that my organisation?
Well, that's where it's got to go next. And the benefit of AI will be in the enterprise.
Yeah.
We've all seen the public GPTs, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, all these sorts of things. They're challenged because they're trained on public data that is sometimes inaccurate, and also you don't want to put confidential data into a public AI system. So when we bring it inside the enterprise, when it's able to actually answer questions about data that's trusted inside the enterprise, that's where it will actually come into its own. And so I see the benefits, the productivity benefits, the better thinking that we'll be able to realize out of AI from data within the system, within the enterprise, is where I think the real power is.
One of the things that struck me when I was looking at the way you described that in the book is that you used the term that explained that cloud technology is the backbone of AI. What did you mean by that?
Well, we wouldn't have ChatGPT and other tools without the cloud, because I'm able to go out there. Yeah. Someone has gone and put a bunch of GPTs in a data center somewhere. But interestingly, as I'm speaking to more experts, they're saying we're going to live in a hybrid world, because sometimes where you want the AI processing power isn't in the cloud because it's expensive and it's not optimized, because public cloud has to be, all commons there. So we may see some workloads actually brought back inside house or on a hybrid cloud. So we're talking about cloud or AI at the edge. we want to have the AI processed where it needs to be processed. So at the moment, when you unlock your phone, it's processing it on the device because you don't want to go off to a cloud server to do that. So it's done on the edge. We're seeing the launch of the AI PC, which has extra processing power. It has not just a GPU, a CPU, but now an NPU, a neural processing unit. So some of those really heavy tasks that would make the processor spin and the fan go crazy are now being done by those three processors. And only when it needs to offload to the cloud will it need to. So we're going to start to see AI at the edge.
Excellent. Now, obviously you talk a lot about AI in the book, but there are other cool technologies that you talk about as well. Tell us a bit more about the other things that are coming up.
It's not an AI book, and so when I've gone into bookstores like Waterstones, they've said, "Oh, we've got enough AI books." No, this isn't just AI.
Yes.
It has several chapters on AI, of course, but it talks about things like blockchain, Bitcoin, tokenization, 5G, IoT. Then we go into new technologies like quantum and sovereign identity, things like that. I want people to understand that if you are to be curious, it's not just all about AI, it's about other technologies. So I'll give you a question. David, you may know the answer to this because you've heard me speak before, but have you heard of Q-Day?
Yes.
Well, for those listening to this that have not heard of Q-Day, Q-Day stands for Quantum Day. It's the day experts predict that quantum computing will be able to decrypt everything that is currently encrypted. Now, why is that a problem? Right now, you do a banking transaction, you've got the padlock up there, everything is secure with SSL. Some bad people out there are actually recording everything they can, even if it's encrypted. So Q-Day is that magic day, and some experts say it's 5 years away, where basically we'll be able to decrypt everything. Now, there are remedies for that. Quantum safe encryption is being developed. But when I say that to my audiences, they say, we haven't heard about that. That sounds like another Y2K. Are you curious enough even to ask your CISO, have we got quantum safe encryption? If they go, what's that? You're in trouble.
I'm speaking as someone with a physics degree. I ought to be able to understand quantum computing and quantum mechanics, but I still struggle with it. But it's interesting. What other, we talked quantum, what other really cool technologies should we be thinking about? As a futurist, what do you think's next?
Yeah, well, so what's next in the AI space? We're going to hear a lot this year about agentic AI, AI agents. And in fact, I digress for a moment. Lauren Walker, hi Lauren, if you're listening, she's now at a she's now an OM, one of the big agencies. She was in an audience at the CES, and Shelley Palmer put up a slide that said, we are now going to be writing ads for robots and marketing to robots because these agents will actually do the bidding for us. And she said, that's funny because you've been talking about that for a while. And I went back to my old talks, and in 2018, I was basically saying to my audiences, one day we'll have to write ads for robots. So we're going to see a lot of agentic AI agents where, now this is the watchword, LinkedIn at the moment is overrun with people talking about AI agents. But what is an agent and what isn't it? It'll come down to trust. So right now, I trust an AI agent to book a meeting for me using Calendly or one of those other plugins. I'm okay with that. And if it mucks it up, I can fix that. But do I trust an AI agent to have full control of my bank account and do a transaction to go and buy something when I have no control? I don't trust it just yet. And AI platforms make mistakes. And so what we'll see is the growth of AI agents, and that will also help inside the enterprise. We're also going to see a lot more reasoning. OpenAI and others are bringing out models. The one from before Christmas was called O1, and now they've brought out O3. Mm-hmm. It will actually introduce reasoning. It'll take longer to find the answer, but it'll go through the steps and it'll give you better qualified answers to your problems. And so we're going to see that as well, which means we're on the path to artificial general intelligence, probably still 5 to 10 to 15 years away. But then it comes down to what is AGI and what isn't it? And have we reached AGI if it can do this? I think we're going to see a lot of that. So that's AI, what's next? I think one thing that I covered towards the end of the book is the thing around, I mentioned before, self-sovereign identity. This means that you can own your own identity. Give me a quick example. You go to a pub, and if the pub has a rule they have to card everyone, you and I get carded, even though we're well above legal drinking age. We give them our driver's license. They put it on some sort of scanner. So they grab your photograph, your driver's license number, your address, and all that information. They don't need that. All they need is a flag to say, are you of legal drinking age? So imagine if the DVLA, the licensing authority here in the UK, could actually issue me a credential that they had signed to say, Andrew is over 18. And I would present that credential to the bouncer, and they would then go, yep, that's right. Another quick example, LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. I worked at IBM from 2013 to 2017, or did I? What about if IBM could actually give me some credentials to guarantee that they're the years and the roles I had at IBM? Yeah. And I got a blue tick on LinkedIn, not because I paid for it to be there, but I've got a credential that I have access to that actually says I really did work there. So we're going to see the rise of people owning their own data. It'll require a lot of effort from governments and also the private enterprise. But that's another thing in the end of the book that made me really curious. And in fact, it was Marie Wallace, who was at IBM, now she's at Accenture, leading their SSI practice. And for me, that's stuff that we don't talk enough about, but is incredibly important to move this technology forward.
Totally agree. Now, you took us back to before the internet in the 80s and personal computing when it started, that kind of thing. I think that the rate of change of technology, it's been steadily accelerating, and I think as of today, every organisation ought to be thinking about themselves in terms of being in a permanent state of reinvention. Competing with themselves to get better. I think that's kind of like a big core of what you're trying to say in the book. Yeah,
it is, but it means everyone needs to be digitally curious, not just the young things, the emerging leaders, but also the senior leadership team. And in my talks, I talk about the notion of two tribes. We have the going digital, very senior people who know how to get things done, but their digital skills are developing. And you have the born digital. Their first toy was a smartphone. The two tribes actually need each other. And so you'd be well aware, and your listeners will be well aware of what a hackathon is, often used to create new products. What about if you had a hackathon with the going digital, the born digital, and the subject of the hackathon was, what does AI mean for company X? That means that both tribes are then exercising this information. They get more and more curious. And this is one of the 5 things I leave my clients with. Run a hackathon. In fact, get the born digital to organize it. They'll be excited, they'll be engaged, and the going digital will be drawn in to be more digitally curious. And that's a better thing for the company.
I like that cross-fertilization very much. That's fantastic. So, that's all been fantastic. Tell us more, where do people find out more? How do they get the book?
The great thing is if you type digitally curious into your favorite search engine, not only will it come up with me, the book where you can buy it, and also the podcast. So the great thing is I've run a podcast for the last 6 years. A lot of my guests are in the book. So digitally curious, or Google me and you'll find it. And I'd love to hear from your listeners and readers and watchers to see what they think and what should be digitally curious too.
Excellent stuff. I love it. Well, just like a year ago in 2024, you've kicked off the new season in a brilliant way. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, David. And stay digitally curious.
I will. And are you available next year?
January 2026. I think, being a futurist, I know I'm available for you, David.
We'll book that. Marvellous. Well, I hope you enjoyed Andrew's explanation of his digitally curious book. Lots of practical advice and about having the right mindset and his suggestions at the end of that talk. Just great. Fantastic for today's fast-moving tech landscape and for grappling with the likes of quantum computing and AI and the like. Thanks. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. We want your feedback. We want your suggestions. Maybe you want to come and be a guest on the show. Put something in the comments here or email us at info@cloudindustryforum.org. We look forward to hearing from you and we hope to see you next time.